Alright, hello. Welcome back to my channel. So before we start, I want to give a really quick apology. I know it's been a very long time since I posted. I think the longest break I've ever taken. I originally planned for my last video to be like my comeback to YouTube after a while, but that did not end up being the case. As many of you probably know by now, I'm a senior in college. I have been working nonstop for the past couple of months. I've been working on schoolwork. I also work 2 jobs outside of school. I have a lot going on. And when I'm not working, I usually just want to do nothing. I don't really choose to make videos, but I have really wanted to get back into making videos. I've missed it. And I think that some of you have missed me, hopefully. But yeah, so I'm back and I hope that this is the start of me like getting into some sort of rhythm again. But I won't make any promises. Like I said, I'm a senior in college. I'm incredibly busy. I'm trying to graduate right now. So bear with me. All right, but with that out of the way, let's just start the video. Before we get into this video, I want to give a huge disclaimer that I want everyone to remember throughout this video that this is not a video to discuss innocence or guilt. I ultimately do not know whether or not either of the idols I mentioned in this video about K-pop bullying scandals are innocent or guilty, and I side eye anyone who thinks that they do. There are a lot of unanswered questions, and we may never know whether or not these 2 idols, Soojin, former member of G-Idol, and Garam, former member of Les Seraphim, are truly responsible for the things they were accused of. What I will be discussing in this video is the circumstances around the scandals they were involved in, and why I think they ended up essentially being forced to leave the group, and the way the scandals were handled by both the idol and the company. Again, I am not making any judgments about guilt or innocence. I'm simply observing why I think Soojin and Garam got booted from their respective groups. K-pop bullying scandals are clearly controversial and everybody has a different opinion, especially on the 2 I'll be discussing today, Soojin and Garam. Now, I'm not really here to get into whether or not I believe they're innocent or guilty because ultimately their innocence or guilt doesn't really matter. I know people get hung up on whether or not someone is truly innocent or guilty, but as we've seen already, it's really about appearance. There's so much information that comes out with these scandals and a lot of it is fake, whether it be on the side of the accused or not. I say this because after Soojin Gate, a lot of people became convinced that they were going to prove her and other idols who had been in her predicament innocent, using supposed statements from old friends of the accused on Pan or netizen buzz. I think this was really propelled by what happened to Jimin from AOA, and so now everyone is overly skeptical. But I think it's important to note that one incident where the accuser was caught lying does not mean that this will be the case for every idol bullying scandal. As I said, ultimately guilt or innocence doesn't matter. It's really about the strength of the accusations and the backlash an idol receives. We've seen plenty of idols who were accused of school bullying who were almost immediately proven innocent, either because people who provably knew them in school and vouched for them, or because the rumors were weak and evidence of bullying could be easily disproven. Soojin and Garam faced the latter issue for separate reasons. So let's go over why exactly these bullying allegations were so damning for them, even if both of them are truly innocent. Once again, keep in mind whether or not they are truly guilty or innocent doesn't really matter, and I am not taking that into account. Ultimately, I do not know if either of them actually did the things that they were accused of, but I think what sealed their fate was the way each of these scandals was handled, and I will be examining the way these rumors were handled by the individuals if they had a role in it and the company. First, let's start with Soojin. As it relates to Soojin, from mine and most people's understanding, while there wasn't any concrete evidence to prove she was a bully, there also wasn't any evidence to prove she wasn't a bully either. And this really became an issue when she and Cube addressed the allegations because they allowed Soojin to back herself into a corner, which I believe is the main reason she eventually left the group. The long statement she posted going into extreme detail about the allegations were a shot in the foot because any discrepancies in her story would have immediately made her look like she was lying, which is exactly what it did. Cube should not have allowed her to address the rumors beyond a simple, "I wasn't a school bully and I'll be taking legal action." To lay out every single accusation and explain her side of the story couldn't have made her look worse on her and Cube's part, as it opened her up to scrutiny and made her look like she was over-explaining things. On top of that, She should have never been allowed to say she would leave the group if the allegations were true, and it does absolutely no favors in gaining her supporters now because it seems like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And as we all know now, Soojin left the group in 2021 and then left Kpop altogether after a police investigation found her accuser not guilty of spreading false information. And Soojin herself dropped the bullying allegations on September 8th, her lawyer giving the reason that there wasn't enough evidence to successfully make a case. Like I said earlier, while there is no definitive proof that Soojin was a bully, there was also no proof proving otherwise, and her accuser, Soojin, was able to keep her hands relatively clean in comparison to Soojin. Regardless of guilt or innocence, she ended up looking like the guilty party in this situation. Now let's move on to Garam. Contrary to Soojin's situation, the problem with Garam is that there was so much evidence and information coming out about the allegations against her that could be interpreted either way. Both Garam and the accuser, Yoo Eun-sa, both claim that they were the real victims, confirming that at the very least something went down between the two of them, regardless of who you choose to believe. In my opinion, the problem in this situation is sort of the opposite of what happened with Soojin. Source did not act fast enough in denying the rumors and ultimately did very little to defend Garam. Kim Garam was revealed as a member of Le Sserafim in early April, and Source waited until the middle of May to make a formal statement, all while rumors of her being a bully were making rounds, with very little evidence surfacing to prove otherwise. The biggest issue here was the fact that the accusers immediately provided evidence that they knew Garam, and at the very least, there was an incident involving her and other students serious enough to get the school involved. Because the accusers were able to get in front of it first and were given ample time to cement their story, anything Garam or Source says that isn't followed up by irrefutable evidence to the contrary looks like damage control. And while it's understandable to some extent that Source couldn't show all of their cards considering they were intending on taking legal action and therefore couldn't share evidence that was going to be used in a lawsuit with the general public, they waited too long to make an official statement, in my opinion. By the time Source announced their plans to take legal action, most people's opinions of Garam's guilt were already cemented, and the majority were not on her side. The odd thing is that despite this delayed response to the accusations, Source really dug their heels in defending her, only to drop her 2 months after they released their official statement. News outlets reported shortly after they released their statement that Source had no intention of making Le Sserafim a 5-membered group, only for Garam to be put on hiatus and then essentially kicked out of the group shortly after. Regardless of her guilt or innocence, it does not look good that Source, after standing by Garam and announcing their plans to take legal action, abandoned their stance so quickly and decided to continue the group with 5 members. It could have been that they found evidence that contradicted their stance, or Garam was collateral damage for one reason or another. We may never know, but ultimately she did not come out of this situation looking good. In addition, this situation should have been handled pre-debut. Garam didn't even get a day as a confirmed member of Le Sserafim before the bullying accusations rolled out. Why Source didn't do any sort of background check on her, I'll never understand. Anything that could have hurt her image as an idol should have been on their radar, and yet this seemingly came as a surprise to them. Either that, or they just didn't think it was important enough to handle before debuting the group. Because Soojin and Garam were accused of school violence as opposed to, say, a crime, there's going to be significantly less evidence to prove they're innocent, because these are largely he said she said situations, and most people don't have written records or witnesses to every argument they ever gotten while they were in middle school or high school. And while that's a ridiculous thing to do, I personally think that it's important that companies properly vet the trainees they're planning to debut. This doesn't really apply as much to Soojin because she was accused 3 years into her career, but as I mentioned in Garam's case, the second her teasers dropped, the accusation started up. And considering that there is school records of proof that at the very least something happened while she was in middle school, Source should have gotten in front of the accusations sooner, regardless of guilt or innocence. Because a lot of people tend to get worked up about these situations, a lot of people will start to point fingers at other idols who have been through similar situations as a means of pointing out hypocrisy. In both of these cases, a lot of people defending Soojin and Garam point to Irene as an example of supposed hypocrisy, considering that Irene still has a thriving career and is well loved despite being involved in a similar situation to this, supposedly. And the answer to this is that every situation is different. For starters, Irene wasn't accused of school bullying. She was accused of chewing out a stylist. While a lot of international fans conflate the two and have a very different view of what bullying is, school bullying is a serious issue in Korea and it can get very violent, which is why these allegations can easily end someone's career if they gain enough traction. Irene was accused of scolding one person on one occasion, while Soojin and Garam were accused of repeated bad behavior. Second, Irene immediately apologized, leaving little to no room for speculation after the fact. People got mad at her, but because she owned up to it, there's little else people can do aside from be upset with her. There's not much room for ambiguity, therefore not much room for speculation, unlike Soojin and Garam's situations. Whether or not they are guilty, the ambiguity surrounding these allegations hurts them more than it helps, as most people are still split on whether or not they believe these rumors or not because they weren't definitively proven innocent and they may not ever be. Even in instances where an idol is accused of repeated bad behavior and it's true, such as Stray Kids' Hyunjin, there is a certain privilege even in being confirmed guilty that prevents rumors and speculation from blowing up like these rumors. The inability on the part of both idol and the company to give an irrefutable answer about their innocence or guilt is likely what hurt Soojin and Garam the most. Like I said, we may never know the truth about these allegations against Soojin and Garam, as people still seem split over their innocence or guilt even though both of them are out of their group. Either way, both of them might still be in their respective groups if their companies had just tried a little bit harder at getting them good PR. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video.